The next guest we have is Lucy Levin, Climate Policy and Intergovernmental Relations. I'm delighted to introduce Lucy, who serves as the Climate Policy Intergovernmental Relations Supervisor at the California Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, CalEPA. Lucy brings valuable experience from her previous role at the California Air Resource Board, where she led a team focused on California climate investment program, spearheaded the development of CARB's oil and gas methane regulation. Her strong technical background includes a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from Washington University in St. Louis, complemented by a master's degree in environmental engineering from the University of Colorado, Boulder. With her blend of policy expertise and scientific knowledge, Lucy offers unique insights into California's environmental initiative and climate strategy. Please join me in welcoming Lucy Levin. Lucy?
Thanks very much, Bobby, for that warm introduction and for the invitation for CalEPA to share with this group. I'm really excited to be here with you all today and have enjoyed listening into the meeting so far. So I'll start with a brief overview of CalEPA and our work for those of you who aren't familiar, though I see some CalEPA names on the Zoom today, so great to see you all. Our mission is to restore, protect, and enhance the environment to ensure public health, environmental quality, and economic vitality. And we fulfill our mission by developing, implementing, and enforcing environmental laws that regulate our air, water, and soil quality, pesticide use, and waste recycling and reduction. Our departments are at the forefront of environmental science, using the most recent research to shape the state's environmental laws. And the Office of the Secretary, which is where I work, heads CalEPA, and we oversee and coordinate the activities of our 6 boards, departments, and offices. Those include the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, the Department of Pesticide Regulation, or DPR, the Department of Resources, Recycling, and Recovery, CalRecycle, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, or DTSC, and the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA, and the State Water Resources Control Board. So CARB works to reduce air pollution and diesel exhaust so all Californians can breathe cleaner air, and also leads the nation in fighting climate change with integrated programs to cut greenhouse gases. DPR protects people and the environment by fostering sustainable pest management and regulating pesticides. CalRecycle helps the state achieve the highest waste reduction, recycling, and reuse goals in the nation through programs that improve our economic vitality and our environmental sustainability. And DTSC cleans up hazardous waste sites to put them back into productive use and reduce blight and contamination to the neighborhoods and surrounding environments. OEHA serves as the scientific foundation for CalEPA's environmental regulations and provides valuable information to consumers, policymakers, and manufacturers on the safety of chemicals in our environment. And last but not least, the State Water Resources Control Board ensures that the quality of drinking water and our waterways is safe and that we balance its use to meet the needs of all Californians. In my role at CalEPA, I primarily support our work on climate policy and intergovernmental relations, so I'll be sharing about some of our efforts in those areas in particular. On climate action, we are truly living in an age of extremes. Extreme wildfires, extreme drought, extreme heat, all fueled by climate change. More frequent and intense heat waves and wildfire seasons increase the urgency of our work to slash air pollution. And we also know that building up resilience is vital for our economy, our infrastructure, and most importantly, our communities. So we are deploying a whole of government approach as we both adapt and mitigate. And California is proud to be a leader on climate action and to demonstrate to other governments around the world how our policies and programs can slash pollution while our economy continues to grow. Between 2000 to 2022, Greenhouse gas emissions in California fell by 20%, while our gross domestic product increased by 78%, pointing to the effectiveness of the state's climate change and air quality programs. For example, greenhouse gas emissions from on-road gasoline and diesel vehicles declined as a result of regulations such as advanced clean cars and the low carbon fuel standard, which require cleaner emissions technology and cleaner fuel, respectively. We know that business as usual carbon emissions cannot continue if we want to provide a safe and habitable future for our children and the communities we serve. And California's 2022 scoping plan lays out the world's first detailed pathway to carbon neutrality by 2045. The scoping plan will drive accelerated deployment of renewable resources as well as fuel and industrial decarbonization strategies that will drive down costs globally and provide health benefits and economic opportunity. And our aggressive transition away from fossil fuel combustion is expected to reduce smog-forming pollution by 71% in 2045. This will benefit the health of our most impacted communities who are disproportionately burdened by fossil fuel pollution. And overall, implementation of the scoping plan will save Californians $200 billion in health costs due to pollution. Any delays in action or insufficient action are a threat to public health and the environment, and the best available science tells us invest now or pay the price later. Given this urgency of climate change and the often disproportionate impacts already being felt by underserved populations across California and the world, efforts to reduce short-lived climate pollutants like methane are especially important. These short-lived climate pollutants are among the most harmful pollutants to the climate and human health, and targeted efforts to reduce these emissions can provide outsized climate and health benefits. So in addition to our overarching greenhouse gas reduction and carbon neutrality targets, California also has a statutory requirement to reduce methane emissions by 40% by 2030 compared to 2013 levels. And since there are hundreds of different emission source types across the three main methane emitting sectors of agriculture, waste, and energy, California has dozens of policies in place and in development to address methane emissions. Just recently in March, California launched a first-in-the-nation satellite program to track and reduce methane emissions, and the project is made possible by a $100 million investment from the state's cap-and-trade program. One satellite has already been launched with up to 7 more to be deployed, and the state will maintain a database and web portal to coordinate and document mitigation actions. While California does not own these satellites, state agencies will be able to select specific regions for observation, and this data will also be available to communities to view methane mitigation efforts, education, and for outreach. And in addition to helping reduce methane emissions in California, the program provides an opportunity for California to work with other jurisdictions which want to develop their own satellite methane monitoring and reduction programs. We know we need to continue to collaborate to achieve our statutory targets and to reduce emissions of short-lived climate pollutants like methane across the globe. So as part of our efforts to advance methane action globally, in 2023, California launched the Subnational Methane Action Coalition, or SMAC, which is an international climate initiative that creates a partnership of subnational governments that are all committed to reducing methane. And this initiative recognizes the critical regulatory role that subnational governments play in meeting our most ambitious climate goals. Since the launch of the coalition, work has been advanced to operationalize the coalition and foster knowledge sharing and technical assistance, all with the support of external partners, including UC Berkeley's Center for Law, Energy, and the Environment. SMAC now counts over 20 governments around the world, and we look forward to continuing our leadership on methane with other high ambition partner jurisdictions around the world in the future. Running since 2013, California's cap-and-trade program, which I mentioned earlier is funding the satellite program, is one of the cornerstones of our climate policy and our road to carbon neutrality by 2045. California is committed to achieving our climate goals in the most effective way that maximizes employment and human health benefits, and the cap-and-trade program is designed with those ends in mind. In 2014, we launched an innovative idea, putting the proceeds from the cap and trade program to work in communities by supporting proven solutions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve public health, and help grow the economy. Over the past decade plus, that has meant investing $28 billion in more than 500,000 projects across the state. Statute requires that at least 35% of all cap and trade funded California climate investments projects benefit priority populations, which includes disadvantaged communities and low-income communities and households. As of May 2024, these investments greatly exceed what is required, and cumulatively 75% or more than $8.5 billion of implemented California climate investments funding is benefiting priority populations. And also importantly, California climate investments projects have supported over 30,000 jobs. We know that we have to act strategically to ensure that the greening of our economy benefits those communities who have long borne the brunt of pollution. And as we work to rapidly decarbonize our economy, we cannot make the same mistakes of the past or leave the same communities behind. And California is prioritizing low-income communities, communities of color, and tribal communities in its decision-making, funding, and programs. And this means meeting communities where they are at, engaging with trusted community leaders, and communicating in their language. At CalEPA, we have the Environmental Justice Action Grants program, which is designed to support communities by funding community-centered and community-led projects across the state. The projects are addressing critical issues ranging from protecting tribes' cultural uses of water to continuing asthma programs to providing environmental health education to youth and so much more. And really importantly, each of these projects leverages the creativity and experience of leaders on the ground and their deep rootedness in their communities to address some of our toughest challenges. The grants fund projects focused on emergency preparedness, public health protection, environmental and climate decision-making, and coordinated enforcement efforts affecting their communities. CalEPA exercised its discretion to use the legislatively funded dollars to prioritize projects that meaningfully involve and engage disadvantaged communities and tribes. The application window for round 2 of the program closed in February, and we're currently in the process of reviewing proposals. And as we continue to build on this work, we must meet communities where they are and design public processes and programs that address their specific needs and ensure everyone is included in this transition. And as a state, we must also continue to drive international leadership in climate and environmental protection to advance action across borders and protect people and the planet. Partnering with other governments is a critical part of our theory of change as we continue our all-hands-on-deck approach to achieving carbon neutrality and building climate resilience. Since California only accounts for around 1% of global emissions, our intergovernmental partnerships act as an impact multiplier for our pioneering climate policies and partnerships with the private sector. And while our intergovernmental partners often look to California's leadership, we know we also benefit significantly from other successes as well as collective action. These partnerships are critical to strengthen climate action and environmental protection through the sharing of information and best practices. For example, Governor Newsom recently signed a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with a consortium of 21 governors from Brazil to collaborate on climate mitigation and adaptation. This expands our collaboration on protections of tropical forests, as was codified in the subnational MOU related to the Governor's Climate and Forest Task Force from almost 2 decades ago. Governor Newsom also recently signed an MOU with the Mexican state of Sonora to strengthen climate and economic ties between the states, including through advancing the development of clean energy, building resilient supply chains, and collaborating on clean transportation efforts. These partnerships are the latest in our over 20 bilateral MOUs with foreign governments at both the national and subnational level. And we also have a number of multilateral partnerships, including our domestic work with other U.S. states and the U.S. Climate Alliance and the America is All In Coalition, and international efforts like the Pacific Coast Collaborative and Under Two Coalition. Governor Newsom recently joined America is All In as its newest co-chair. This coalition of state and local leaders aims to cut emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050, while building resilience in the face of increasing climate impacts. And in 2008, we founded the Pacific Coast Collaborative, and we have been collaborating with Oregon, Washington, and the Canadian province of British Columbia on regional climate and environmental issues ever since. Also in 2015, we co-founded the Under Two Coalition, which is now the largest network of subnational governments committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050 at the latest. And in 2017, California joined with other climate leading states to launch the US Climate Alliance and to let the world know that regardless of who is in Washington, our states are running down the field on climate. And together with the other US Climate Alliance states, we represent 55% of the US population and 60% of the US economy. We know that climate change does not recognize borders, and we need urgent collective action with partners across the globe to protect our planet for future generations. Now more than ever, subnational governments must demonstrate our continuing steadfast commitments to high ambition climate action. And as California shows, subnational actors can be key leaders in this work, with states and local jurisdictions acting as a proving ground for mitigation approaches. Under Governor Newsom's leadership, CalEPA is proud to lead the interagency coordination of much of California's intergovernmental climate partnerships. Thank you all very much for the time today. I really look forward to hearing from the rest of the speakers this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Great. We have somebody with Michelle. Go ahead, unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Excited to hear about what CalEPA is doing. The most obvious question is, has CalEPA been advising Governor Newsom about how detrimental to the environment his 4-day-a-week RTO is? One of the biggest things that we all saw from the pandemic is the drop in carbon emissions when everybody stayed at home to work. Can you please talk about that and what CalEPA is saying to Governor Newsom and how they are advising him on this detrimental new policy? Thank you.
Thanks very much for that question, Michelle. Unfortunately, that's kind of outside of my role, so I have not been involved in any conversations in terms of the return to office mandate, but I know that CalEPA leadership has been working closely with the administration on all things. And yeah, unfortunately can't speak to that in particular.
No problem, Lucy. I appreciate, I know your function is limited to discussion of what you just presented. About the cap and trade, if you could just give us a general overview of what that is. I know you mentioned it. It's supposed to benefit the environment, and it's supposed to be some credit assigned to sectors that are emitting, the greenhouse gases and trading of allowances. Can you just break that down in a simplified way that most of our audience can understand?
Yeah, definitely. And I can also share a link in the chat with more details about the program, since I know it can be hard to explain just by hearing verbally, and nice to have some resources to turn to. But basically that it establishes a declining limit on major sources of greenhouse gas emissions throughout California and creates an economic incentive for cleaner, more efficient technologies. And there's a lot more. It's a very complicated program that CARB maintains and operates, and I recommend turning to the website for more details, but I'm happy to follow up and connect folks with CARB if there are any questions.
Recently, what was in the publicity in the media was that the present Trump administration came up against many of the environmental programs, including perhaps cap and trade. How would that executive order impact California cap and trade program?
Yeah, you may have also seen that the Governor Newsom released a press release following that. And, the administration is working with the legislature as they consider extending the cap and trade program beyond 2030 to achieve carbon neutrality. And I think the quote that Governor Newsom has was that the Trump executive order was just a press release. And they will continue to work with our power in California to advance climate action and achieve carbon neutrality through all our different tools.
Great. Glad to hear that. See, you did fine with that response. You referred to the comment, and that's quite illuminating. Do we have questions for Lucy about CalEPA or anything that she discussed, any of the other departments that CalEPA generally oversee, water boards, CalRecycle, DPR, CARB? I know CARB has done a good job of incentivizing many programs where getting rid of air pollution by trading off your gas lawnmower with battery and subsidizing the use of electric product. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, CARB has a number of incentive programs to help us decarbonize really across our whole economy. And there's a number of programs funded both by cap and trade through California climate investments and other funding sources to help reduce emissions. So there's a lot of great resources. I can share also a link to the California Climate Investments website, which talks more about specific incentive programs, and you can also view by audience type. So if you're an individual applying for funding, you can see what kind of incentives might be available for you. And there's a lot of great resources on that webpage as well.
Great. Thank you for posting that on our chat. I think that's going to be quite helpful. I know I'm definitely going to look it up and see how I can save more money. Alex, you have your hand up. Go ahead, unmute, ask your question. And before I get to Alex, I do want to quickly address, I think Michelle just commented, who would be the person at CalEPA who could speak to advising Newsom about the RTO, return to office?
Yeah, I can share. We have a new Deputy Secretary for Fiscal Policy Administration. So that is Brandy Hunt. That would be my recommended contact as a starting point.
Michelle, you got your answer. Get busy. All right. Alex, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering about I believe you mentioned disadvantaged communities. I don't know if you could elaborate more on what CalEPA defines as a disadvantaged community. I don't know if it's different than what the state of California and specific agencies have for their own disadvantaged community definitions. And I'm not sure if anybody or if everybody here is aware of what that typically stands for and what it comprised of.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a statutory definition, and I'll share the resource in the chat for that as well. But the definition uses CalEnviroscreen, which is a tool to identify burdened. So there's kind of 4 categories of disadvantaged communities. There's census tracts that receive the highest 25% of overall scores in CalEnviroscreen. And there's more information about CalEnviroscreen and how that works in the website I shared. And then there's also census tracts that don't have overall scores in CalEnviroscreen due to data gaps, but that have the highest 5% of CalEnviroscreen cumulative pollution burden scores. Census tracts that were identified in the 2017 designation as disadvantaged, regardless of their CalEnviroscreen scores. And then there's also lands under the control of federally recognized tribes, and that there's a tribal consultation process to help establish those, but all of that information feeds into the disadvantaged communities map, which is on the website that I shared. So you can see there more information about how that is made and what communities are included on the map. Like I said, there's priority populations, which is another statutory definition, includes both disadvantaged communities and low-income communities and households. And the California Climate Investments website that I shared earlier, they have a map that shows priority populations as a whole, including disadvantaged communities. And that's where there's statutory requirements for California Climate Investments funding to go towards those communities.
Okay, and then within those definitions of that you discussed, are there any disaggregated available type data which shows persons with disabilities as whatever segment they would fall into within maybe low income, medium, et cetera? Is there any breakout?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's included in CalEnviroScreen. It's not something that I've seen in the data previously, but definitely worth exploring the resources and seeing if it's there. And if not, feel free to reach out to me via email. I can always follow up with my colleagues to see if that's information that we have.
Okay.
I can share my email in the chat as well.
Excellent, thank you. And then just a follow-up question because of the questions about Governor Newsom, but I'm not going to specifically call it out with regards to that. And for me, it's more of informational. Do you have knowledge of where such data could be obtained if somebody wanted to get those kinds of maybe emissions values, perhaps based on number of vehicles on the road or times of day, so people can do their own information gathering rather than trying to reach out to specific people?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that data is available or what level of granularity there is. I know CARB has a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. It looks like Michelle put in the chat that CalHR was gathering and publishing that information. So that might be a good starting point.
Okay, I'm all about data. All right, thank you so
All
much.
right.
For my questions.
Thanks, Alex. Great question. We have another question for Lucy on the chat. What do you think CalEPA could do to ensure that more materials are recycled properly and less ends up in landfills? Great question.
Yeah, so that falls under CalRecycle's purview within CalEPA, and they have a number of policies and programs that are designed to do just that. There's different statutory mandates and different programs that are active and under development. And there's a lot that they're doing to help catalyze a circular economy where we're both throwing out less things and reusing more things, and then also having things go into recycling and other streams rather than landfills. So there's a lot of exciting work at CalRecycle happening in that space. And I can share their website in the chat as well, in case you want to peruse some of their programs and learn more about some of the work they're doing in that space.
Thank you. Just a comment that came through here says, we better do something about the landfill issue or else we end up in a third world countries. I think what she meant to say, the stuff ends up in a third world countries if it's not recycled correctly. Any other questions for Lucy? If you have any questions, please unmute. Let's see, Mindy. Thank you, Mr. Pinata, for asking where data can be located on carbon emissions. I know DGS, and this might answer Michelle too, is that I think it was DGS who had this on their, site, like a dashboard at the beginning of the pandemic. They were keeping track of all this. As says, I know DGS had a large study for the government at the beginning of pandemic, so we have some great historical data somewhere. Thank you, Mindy, for that great question. Any other question for Lucy? Hearing none, Lucy, this was fantastic. We gained a wealth of knowledge from your presentation, learned a lot about CalEPA and the great work that you guys do. And please come back and see us anytime. You're welcome to stay on after your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much for all the great questions and look forward to hearing from the rest of the speakers.
Great. Thanks.